God is like the landowner in this parable. God is very generous. He blesses people in many, many ways, in unique ways, in different ways, ways that are based on our state of life, that are based on our vocation, based on God's will for us. He gives graces to us, whether we ask for them or not, so that we can accomplish His will. Of course, the temptations lead us to envy. And so we're called to avoid envy in any way that we can. To avoid the temptation to ask, is this it? Is there more? Should I have what someone else has? So we're asked to combat envy in many ways, and we can do it by exercising goodwill, by doing good things for others, by living in humility, knowing our weaknesses, knowing our faults and failings, and despite all that, coming up on top, not worrying about what others have, but focusing on what we have. Are you envious because I am generous? Thus, the last will be first, and the first will be last. The Gospel of the Lord. My dear brothers and sisters, I think most of us, if not all of us, are familiar with the Apollo 11 mission. It was the first lunar landing on the moon where Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin set foot on the moon, the first humans to ever do that, to accomplish that feat. And we might not remember the number of the Apollo mission. Maybe now you will that I said it, but it's there. But it gets so much more attention than the Apollo 12 mission, which was the second lunar landing mission. It happened 3 months after the first. But a lot goes into all of these missions. It's really, a calling for someone to even study and have the aptitude to become an astronaut, to get accepted into NASA and then into the program to prepare to fly to the moon, land on it, and come back to Earth. So it's quite a feat. It's quite an honor, I think, quite a distinction. Even if you're not the first ones there, to still be able to do something that not everybody has a chance to do is pretty amazing. And these two astronauts in the second landing mission, Al Bean and Pete Conrad, they got to the moon, they successfully landed, they walked the moon, and they got back on their ship, and they were making their way back to Earth. And Al Bean, he looked at Pete Conrad, and he said to him, we just walked on the moon, but it's kind of like the song, "Is that all there is?" And I'm not going to sing the song for you. I don't know the lyrics, so we'll leave it at that. But his friend, the astronaut that was with him, Pete Conrad, was very relieved when he heard it, because he said that he was secretly thinking the same thing, that while the moonwalk he could describe as spectacular, it wasn't really momentous for him. So all that training, all that preparation, all the things that had to line up to make it happen didn't really meet up with the expectation that they really had for what this walk on the moon would be. This thrill of anticipation that made this wondrous experience happen to them kind of fell flat in a way. And so their good attitude, in a way, was not as good. It was a little diminished. In our gospel today, we hear something similar in the parable of the laborers, where the landowner goes out at the beginning of the day at dawn, and he finds some workers to work in his vineyard. And it says in the gospel that they made an agreement, they made a contract that they would work throughout the day, and they would accept the daily wage, the usual daily wage. And so both were pretty happy. The landowner got people to go work in his vineyard, and these workers who were kind of hanging around and maybe looking for work had an opportunity not only to do something productive for the day, but to earn some pay for the day. And then we hear that the landowner went out again. He saw more men and more laborers hanging around at 9 a.m. and noon and at 3, even at 5 p.m., even 1 hour before the day would be over. And he also offered them a job in the vineyard, it says, for a just wage. And then, of course, to make it more difficult, he decides to pay them at the end of the day from last to first. So he starts out, as it said, with the ones who came last, the ones who only worked for 1 hour, and he gave them the day's wage. So for 1 hour's work, they got paid for the whole day, and he did that all the way through. And as he was doing that, the expectations of those first laborers, the ones who made the original agreement to work all day for the one daily wage, they kind of anticipated through the generosity of this owner that they were going to get get paid more than the wage, because they said, well, if he's going to pay someone who worked for 1 hour, then he's so generous, he'll probably give us a bonus, maybe even double what we had. And so they were thinking to themselves how great it was going to be that this generous landowner has all this money and they're going to get more than what the agreement was. And then, of course, the landowner gives them what they agreed on, the usual daily wage, the same pay as all the other laborers who worked less hours than they did. And even though they got what they agreed with, they kind of probably said to themselves, like the astronauts who were on the moon the second time, is that all? Is that it? And the landowner recognizes that, and he questions them, and he says, are you envious because I'm generous? And I think that's what this gospel is about. It has many, many lessons, and one of them is it does give us a little bit of a glimpse of what the dangers of envy are, and the capital sin. That envy is one of the 7 deadly sins. It's a sin that means that we want something that somebody else has, and we'll do whatever it takes to get it, even if it's an unjust means. And it leads to so many terrible things. St. Augustine commented on this sin, the sin of envy. He called it the diabolical sin, the diabolical sin. Out of all the 7 deadly sins, he considered it probably the worst. And he said it's so bad because out of envy, so many nasty things come from it, that when we are envious, it can lead to hatred. It could lead to detraction, where you belittle somebody or disparage them because they have more than you. It could lead to calumny, where you damage someone's reputation. Sometimes envy can lead someone to have joy at the misfortunes of others. And of course, like we see here a little bit, it even kind of leads to displeasure in other people's success and displeasure in other people's progress. The workers who were hired first displayed envy in this case. They grumbled against the owner. They kind of spoke ill of him in a way. And the owner, he started out on a good note, and they kind of left on a bad note, where the owner, he gave them what they agreed on, but he told them pretty much, take it and go. This is what's yours. I gave you what we agreed, and, kind of get lost. And so today, we have to beware of the temptations that lead us to envy, especially ones where we build up our perceptions of things that aren't always what they truly are, that we might see something as unfair when we're getting exactly what was due to us and what is just. Or if we have a heightened expectation for something and it doesn't quite match up what we thought, or a thrill of anticipation. It leads to false hope sometimes. It could lead us to become upset or even bitter when we really should have no reason to be so. God is like the landowner in this parable. God is very generous. He blesses people in many, many ways, in unique ways, in different ways, ways that are based on our state of life, that are based on our vocation, based on God's will for us. He gives graces to us, whether we ask for them or not, so that we can accomplish His will, to save ourselves and to save those around us, and to advance His kingdom, to advance the gospel message in the world today. All the baptized are called to be strengthened against these sins, but of course the temptations lead us to envy. And so we're called to avoid envy in any way that we can, to avoid the temptation to ask, is this it? Is there more? Should I have what someone else has? And so we're asked to combat envy in many ways, and we can do it by exercising goodwill, by doing good things for others, by living in humility, knowing our weaknesses, knowing our faults and failings, and despite all that, coming up on top, not worrying about what others have, but focusing on what we have. To rejoice in the successes of others, to rejoice in the progress that others make in life, even if it's better or appears better than what we have. And above all, to be thankful for all the things that we do have. There's so many small things in life that we have that are so great that, in our country and in our time, other people would wish that they even had a fraction of it. And we're just so used to having that and looking for more and wanting more because we see it in front of us that we lose sight sometimes of the great things that God has given us. And so instead of worrying about what others have and saying, I want more and I need to have what the next person has, be grateful for the things that we do have. Because God gives us things, so many things. They don't always meet our expectations, but in reality and truth, in some way, they are all that we need.